Over the years, I've accumulated different speakers for various areas of my home. Some I'm going to listen to in the living room, another set will work on the computer, yet another pair while watching movies with the family, and so on and so on. As I get more into hi-fi and becoming more exposed to higher quality sound, I naturally want to start upgrading to higher quality speakers. This leads me to wonder, where do I start? What is a good bang for buck setup that will elevate my experience while keeping the footprint to a minimum and my budget in check? Can a single system be used across different applications? After talking with Paul Barden on the Soundstage Audiophile podcast, which I'm the host of, I started taking a deeper dive into PSB's offerings and found the PSB Alpha IQ system. The PSB Alpha IQ is a 2-channel, fully contained, active small bookshelf speaker system. The price point for the system is $12.99 in the US. A reasonable price point to experience higher quality audio than your traditional system in a box, smart speakers, or those soundbars that you find at Best Buy. To really run this system through the paces, I set them up for 3 different use cases. First, I set them up in the TV room to see how they perform in an entertainment system. After that, I got them connected to my computer to use these mini monitors for an elevated sound experience while working away. Finally, I slapped them onto the bookshelf in the living room to have them as the daily driver for music listening and family musical ambiance. To get started, first they need to get out of the box. Right as you open the box, you may notice a pair of European power leads. Don't worry, the North American unpolarized 2-prong power leads are just below. PSB was nice enough to provide both, allowing you to plug them in wherever you may be. You also get an Ethernet cable for wired connectivity and a 3.5mm to 3.5mm analog cable. All the cables are black in color, which I believe match the Midnight Blue review pair very well. My wife, on the other hand, wanted cables that blended into the living room. More on that later. Other IQ cabinet colors you can choose from include matte white, matte black, Dutch orange, and tangerine yellow. The speakers themselves are very well built with a beautiful finish and some nice details like these metal trims, which are actually part of the substrate and are doing more than simply adding good looks. You could check out Gordon Brockhouse's full written review linked in the show notes below to learn more. From the front, both speakers look identical with an upward tilted listening axis design that has the mid-range woofer above the tweeter. Just below the tweeter cone, you'll notice a status light on each speaker that changes colors based on what's happening with the speakers. There is both a main speaker that holds all the connectivity options, as well as a secondary speaker that connects wirelessly and just plugs into the wall. On the top of the main speaker, there's a touch-sensitive bar that allows you to control volume and play pause without needing to go to your control device, such as a phone, tablet, or computer. Turn the speakers around, and you notice the main unit has all those connectivity options. Power, of course, optical digital connection, 3.5mm analog plug, HDMI ARC, a phono connection for a turntable, Ethernet, USB Type-A for storage devices, and a subwoofer output should you wish to add a sub. On the back of the secondary speaker, you'll get power and a USB Type-A port for servicing. Going over some of the technicals of the speaker, the Alpha IQs offer 30 watts of power for the 3/4 inch tweeter and 60 watts of power for the 4-inch woofer, with the crossover between the 2 drivers sitting at 3000 Hz. The frequency response is specified 64 to 20,000 Hz on axis, which on paper might seem to be less bass than some of the others in this category. However, in actual listening to these speakers, you'll be shocked at how full the IQs sound. The IQ system is a bass reflex design, meaning each speaker has a port, which helps deliver the extra bit of bass that I'll be mentioning throughout the review. Setting up the IQs is straightforward once you have the speakers in place. First, download the BlueOS app to a device, then plug in the power leads from the speaker to the wall and open up the BlueOS app to configure. I had 2 nitpicks in the process. Number 1, they don't mention if the primary or secondary speaker needs to be on the left or right. I found out in the setup process later on, it doesn't actually matter, with a step to define where you've placed them. And 2, a QR code on the quick start guide to lead you to the app would have been a nice touch. I will be able to survive the few extra screen taps to find the app in the App Store and install it though. In my case, the whole setup process took about 5 minutes. The initial steps in the app were a fraction of that time as it guides you through giving BlueOS permission to get your speakers on your network, which speakers you placed on the left and the right, and naming the speakers. The remaining time was the app negotiating the network protocol between the speakers. I'm not sure if this is because of my network setup or if it's pretty standard time for BlueOS configurations. Either way, I was very eager to listen to these guys. It's worth noting that there is no wired connection between the primary and secondary speaker. It is all strictly wireless, with each speaker only requiring a power lead in order to work. Other similar speakers sometimes rely on wired interconnects between the primary and secondary that transfer power and/or signal. Both methods have their pros and cons, especially in different listening setups. For my living room setup, I have a wall plug between the two speakers, and it was easier to hide the power cables going down to the plug rather than try and hide an interconnect cable between the two speakers. In my later setups, you'll see where I may have benefited from a wired interconnect between the two speakers. To get started, I put the Alpha IQs in the TV room and hooked them up directly via HDMI ARC so I could stream movies, shows, and music. Now, here is something that is important to know about these speakers. The tweeter is below the mid-range woofer, but I learned that Paul Barton didn't design these speakers so you have your ears at tweeter level, which is the way it is with many speakers. As I said before, these speakers have an upward tilted listening axis, which means on a typical speaker stand that's, let's say, 24 inches high, your ears will actually be above the drivers and maybe even the cabinets. But that's okay. Paul Barton designed these speakers so that when they're on a stand that high, they'll project the sound a little upwards. And with a normal listening distance of, say, 8 to 9 feet, the optimum height for your ears is about 3 feet, which is how high an average person's ears are from the floor when they're sitting in a chair or a sofa. So for this setup, I used a set of inexpensive 24-inch monoprice speaker stands to get the Alpha IQs at the right listening height. The hookup was a breeze with the addition of a single HDMI cable directly into the TV and a quick source change via the BlueOS app. The accuracy and frequency range of these speakers made using them in this home theater setup a real pleasure. Dialogue came through crystal clear, and there was a good amount of bass for daytime viewing. When watching movies at night though, I usually like pushing the bass a little bit more. This had me reaching for a single-ended RCA terminated cable and plugging in an externally powered subwoofer to take care of that extra deep bass. I found this not only gave me the deep bass I was after, but it also further improved the sound quality of the mids and highs. An annoyance I had the first couple of days was when everything was powered off, the speakers wouldn't automatically have their source set to HDMI when things powered back on. I was thinking how nice it would be to have an input selection on that touch-sensitive strip along the top of the main speaker for easy source switching. I eventually found an auto-sense setting which allows the speakers to automatically move to the selected source, in my case HDMI, when a signal is detected. This is exactly what I was looking for and made the remaining time I had the Alpha IQ set up in the entertainment system seamless. Perhaps I should have read the instructions, but where is the fun in that? The next setup I put the Alpha IQs in was on my computer desk. I wanted to test drive this accurate system and use them as micro monitors while I edited videos and listened in my day-to-day work. Right off the bat, finding 2 empty power plugs on my overloaded desk was a bit of a struggle. I ended up moving some tech around to make room for the Alpha IQs, and this is an example of where that wired interconnect probably would have made my life easier. AirPlay 2 introduces a slight lag, which is a deal breaker for me while editing video. The 3.5mm connection worked, but I found the level drastically reduced, likely due to the dock I'm using not being high output. To get the most out of the Alpha IQs for my computer, I went to Amazon and bought this nifty USB-C to optical adapter, which did the trick. That said, I did still find there was the slightest of delays in the audio from the computer to the speakers. The speakers themselves seem to be perfectly in sync, but from the computer to the speakers, there seemed to be somewhat of a buffer delaying the sound. Overall, I found the compact size and solid punch of these speakers to be ideal for the computer setup. They could also play much louder than I really ever would have needed them to. The mid-range was detailed and gave me confidence while editing talking head videos that the audio was as it should be. All told, these are the best computer speakers I've ever heard, albeit with a lag in my particular use case. My wife was home when I finally sat down to try out the Alpha IQs in the living room, with the first thing she said being, "The blue looks great here, but I wish the cables were white." Well then. A huge advantage the Alpha IQs have is their power leads are the universal unpolarized figure 8 plug, or the IEC 320 C7 if you want to be technical. This means you can pick up different sizes, colors, or even angled plugs to fine-tune how you connect them to power. I love the companies that use standard connections that make changing things out simple and painless. Within the first couple of minutes of listening to the Alpha IQs in the living room, I was impressed by how much sound and the quality of the sound that came from these tiny boxes. Not only were the high frequencies detailed and accurate, the mid-range was full with lovely vocal reproductions, and the bass has a shocking amount of power that really sold the fullness of music I was listening to. If I were to choose just one song to show off what the Alpha IQs could do, it would be Sex to Me by Charlotte Cardin. The bass range and how that blended so well with the beautiful vocal performance on this track sounded superb. And if forced to choose a second example to highlight the powers of these tiny bookshelf speakers, I'd recommend Hurricane by the Band of Heathens. The Alpha IQs offer the pleasure of distinctly hearing the individual instruments and dual vocals of this awesome rock group. Regardless of the music, as the volume rose, the speakers remained smooth and distortion-free. But I also appreciated that these speakers didn't need to be cranked up to be accurate. Even at a low background level, you can hear detail in tracks across the range, which is really great for having good ambiance when friends are over or when you just want to listen to some Zeppelin during dinner time. Of the three setups, my hands down favorite was having the Alpha IQs set up in the living room as a listening system. This isn't really a surprise, as this seems to be what they were designed, built, and marketed for primarily. The sound quality is really impressive, especially considering the size of the speaker system as well as the price point. A pair of Alpha IQs also makes a worthy speaker system to explore if you're looking for a smaller stereo footprint in your home theater environment. The ability to plug directly in via HDMI ARC makes it a seamless setup with only a single cable and no extra configuration required. For my own taste, I would want to use a dedicated subwoofer to take care of the deep bass for movie watching, as I found it extended the overall clarity of the sound system. Probably because I was relieving the speakers from having to do all the heavy lifting in the bass. The touch-sensitive panel above the primary speaker was especially useful in the home theater setup, as it was placed right by the hallway in our space. As we walked by my kids watching a movie or TV show, my wife or I could quickly adjust the volume or even pause it entirely to get a word in. When I was the one enjoying the system, I relied on the app itself to make any adjustments, while the HDMI ARC meant that the Apple TV remote could seamlessly control the volume. My least favorite setup with the Alpha IQs was using them in my computer setup. Everything from the size to the accuracy to the bass would make these ideal for that computer setup, with the struggle that I experienced being around the connection options. I settled on buying that optical adapter to USB-C to go from the computer into the adapter into the optical input on the Alpha IQs. Listening to music through them on the computer sounded great, as did watching movies on services such as YouTube, with the issue that I experienced coming up when I started editing video. That slight delay between what I was hearing through the speakers versus what I was seeing on the screen was an annoyance to me. These problems could have mostly been with my system and setup, so if you've hooked up a pair of Alpha IQs and you didn't see any lag issues, especially when editing video, comment below and let me know. A few things to consider about your own setup or listening preference that might not make the Alpha IQs right for you. If your setup isn't ideal for using two power outlets, you may want to look at alternatives that offer a wired interconnect between the speakers. If you're the sort of person that enjoys fine-tuning frequency range profiles, the BlueOS app doesn't offer that level of detailed tinkering for the Alpha IQs. On the other hand, these speakers are so good sounding on their own, right out of the box, most people probably won't want to mess with that. For smaller rooms or layouts that don't lend themselves to larger bookshelf or floor standers, the Alpha IQs deliver. They are both well-designed and well-built with accurate, powerful sound at a price point that is not out of reach for those looking to upgrade their soundbars or big box store systems to something that can give you a taste of hi-fi. Would the Alpha IQ speaker system work in your audio setup? Would you use them in your home theater as a music listening system, or have you had a total different experience than mine and use them with your computer? Let us know in the comments below, and make sure to subscribe to the Soundstage Network channel for new videos on everything hi-fi. All the best.